Rocky Horror Minute is rated R. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is also rated R. We're going to spend this time discussing the movie in gory detail, and along the road we will talk about some adult content and use some of our favorite swear words.
Taylor, McCarty, Navy, Maley, Lakin.
Consider yourselves warned. Welcome to Rocky Horror Minute, the podcast where we break down the Rocky Horror Picture Show in excruciating detail, 1 minute at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Leandra.
And I'm your other host, Kelly.
And today we're going over minute 56, and also celebrating an anniversary.
Are we?
Yeah, it's been 9 episodes since we returned.
I see. And a simple 9. Yeah, that is it's a milestone. What did you get me?
I got you the ability for you to explain what happens in minute 56.
Oh, you really shouldn't have. So we last left Janet midway through the word friends, and she continues, friends or sane persons. Oh, Brad. She kind of turns to the side, puts her hand up to her mouth during this, and then she puts both of her hands over her left breast and looks up and then she gets kind of indignant and goes, "What have they done with him?" and marches over to the transducer board, pulls down on the lever. The monitor comes on to reveal Brad sitting on the edge of his bed smoking a cigarette with Frankenfurter reclining in a robe, just sort of regarding him. She puts 2 and 2 together upon seeing this and gasps and says, "Brad! Oh, Brad! How could you?" And she starts crying in a very exaggerated way with her head in her hands against the transducer board lever. The monitor goes off, and then she starts to hear kind of almost Wookiee noises coming from the tank, like, "Rrr, rrr." So she goes over to investigate and sees something is trembling under a sheet in the bottom of the tank. So she lifts it to reveal
Bambi.
It is not my dog Bambi, although she is frequently trembling and does love to be under blankets and does make noises like that. But instead, it is Rocky.
Oh.
And thank God it's Rocky, considering what she's about to do with him. I would not want her doing that with my dog. She gasps, and he stands up. He's covered in soot or mud. It's really black, though, and it's kind of just, like, all over him. We'll talk about that later, but he's got that all over him, and he sort of leans out of the tank on one arm, sort of like a trucker. And she goes, "Oh, but you're hurt." She is examining what I would call a minor scrape on his right hand while she does this, and does it's kind of a motherly, like matronly type of, "Did they do this to you?" And he nods solemnly. Then she pounds the tank with her fist and looks around indignantly, then bends over and rips a couple inches off the bottom of her slip and says, "Here, I'll dress your wounds. Poor baby there. Oh." And that's the minute.
It's a good minute. I apologize for implying that Bambi would be in the tank. That's just, for this minute alone, it would be fine, but for any minute before or after, it would not be.
Well, fortunately for Bambi, in 1975, I think they considered the breeding of a Chihuahua with a Yorkshire Terrier to be an abomination, and nobody would do it on purpose, so she did not exist yet. And right they were.
Yeah, that's fair.
Before we get too much further, we discussed the sort of rapid cuts they do in this scene and the scene before in our last minute. And we discussed whether we thought it was a choice. Well, in listening to the commentary again, I remembered / confirmed that it was indeed intentional. Well, that was not their first choice, but again, as we talked about last minute, this is where Once in a While went. So whenever you see those rapid cuts, it's because Once in a While chunks went in between it. And Richard O'Brien said he actually thinks it works well and looks really cinematic, but that wasn't really how they wanted it to be. And then he complained quite a bit about them cutting once in a while. He says he doesn't understand why he isn't sure why it was cut. He thinks they didn't understand the song and that's why they cut it. And I'm like, is it possible they understood the song and were bored by it? But we can discuss that in our discussion of Once in a While. But he said that, and then he went on to talk about this. I just thought was interesting. He said Fox greenlighted this movie, and then they changed the head of Fox, and Alan Ladd Jr. came to be the head of Fox. And he didn't want to do this movie and tried to put a stop to it, but he was basically too late because they had already started production. So it went through. So I think that's interesting. This movie wouldn't have happened if he had anything to say about it. But they also added that by the time they'd finished the movie, he was no longer the head of Fox already. So
Oh, that's crazy.
I know. But anyway, I thought that was interesting that the Fox executive tried to put the kibosh on this movie. I certainly would have had a lot more free time if he had succeeded.
Yeah, what would we have had our podcast about?
Well, we wouldn't have met, but if we had met, I'm guessing we would have had the podcast about Phantom of the Paradise.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
reasonable. So, one thing that I wanted to start with is just, particularly in this minute, Susan Sarandon's acting as Janet. It's not the strongest. I think it makes sense that Susan Sarandon recently shared in an interview that she got the part because she was playing the part comedically at auditions. But I I feel like she really does go on a face journey, but it doesn't feel necessarily attached to the vocal acting. Would you agree?
Yeah, and it makes total sense that she was intentionally playing it comedically. I think we alluded to that during our discussion of the sex scenes because we were comparing the way that she did it to the way Brad did it and pointing out that she did it way cheesier and more over the top, clearly on purpose. Especially like she's had obviously a really impressive acting career and has been in a lot of things. We know this isn't just how she acts. This was a choice she was making.
It definitely is a choice she was making, and
Yeah.
often makes, I'd say.
I don't know if that's true. You've seen The Hunger. She isn't anything like this in The Hunger.
That is true. Oh, I forgot about the hunger. I
Yeah.
forgot about the hunger.
Now she mostly plays MILFs, which is fair.
Wouldn't you?
So that's a different type of character. I mean, oh my gosh, wouldn't I? Would I ever? But so
Okay. I stand corrected. I'm just thinking of I've seen a couple of things that she's been in that weren't super strong, and I think that I was letting that cloud my judgment.
yeah, that's fair. I think it's clear that she is being intentionally unserious with this role, and I think it's a good choice. I think that's what makes the character of Janet fun.
Agreed. It's the melodrama.
Yeah, and just the super over the top of like everything she does really is so like, oh, well, I would never. And then she gets so slutty.
It almost feels like by this time in the shooting, she's already decided that this is a film that she doesn't think many people are going to see, so she's just going to have fun with it.
Sometimes those are the best acting jobs.
Oh, yeah. So, one final thought that I have about Janet specifically, I feel like if you're watching a live shadowcast, at least at our shows, this bit for Janet gets buried. We're scrambling to strike the bedroom scene setup and bring the tank back in, and you don't really get to see, or you don't really get to fully focus on Janet's flouncing and kind of face journey that she goes through.
It's a fun little spotlight moment for Janet, and she's being so silly, and that lets me be so silly, but I also think that audiences are like, move it along. so
Oh, that's fair.
so it's kind of it's a mixed bag, but the thing I really hate about this, which I really should have talked about last minute because this issue happens last minute, is that Janet really needs to be out on stage before the end of Brad's sex scene for it to be on time, because there is not 1 second between the monitor going off and her starting to say, "What's happening here?" But the only way that I can really accomplish that is to just go out there before Riff comes on the monitor, because otherwise you would have to go out. Well, actually, this is specific to our theater, I should say. In our theater, Riff would peek out of the same door that goes to our backstage, so I would have to go out past him, upstage him, and go to where we have our elevator. And that isn't something I want to do during a little Riff moment, so I usually wait till after and am a little late if I wasn't able to get out there beforehand. But if you get out there beforehand, you're just kind of standing there. So
You could always just sit in the seats.
that's true. I could. But so yeah, that it's not a great scene to watch, but it's kind of a fun scene to perform.
I can agree with that. It is one of my favorites for Janet, but from the audience's perspective, maybe not.
On the topic of her melodrama, do we think she's legitimately this upset about Brad cheating on her? And if so, is it about Brad or is it about, like, her ego?
I think that it's the ego. I
Yeah.
think that it's also she just spent a huge amount of time going, I have so many regrets about this thing that I just did. And now she's able to kind of push some of that onto Brad and go, I can't believe that he was actually the slut all along.
And then she goes on to disprove her own claim.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that if she's sad about the deterioration of her faithful relationship with Brad, she gets over it quite quickly. I would say in less than a minute. So,
Yes.
so there's that. But it's just interesting to think about where her head's at with this, or if she's just. I mean, I think it's possible that she really does not care about this, and it's more like she obviously has to act upset and hurt because it's a matter of pride.
Yeah.
So that was just my thought on her.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of how I would feel if this complete nerd of a person who I have just become engaged to that I've been cheating on, all of a sudden, if I find out that they're cheating on me too and it's with the same person, I would be so pissed for so many reasons. Just pick one.
Yeah, it's like you're both getting my sloppy seconds. How embarrassing for you.
That is true. Speaking of sloppy seconds, watching Brad sitting up smoking a cigarette with Frank either sleeping or just chilling on the bed, like with this lol we boned sort of
Yeah.
demeanor, is just amazing.
Yes.
And if that is all we're going to see from once in a while, that's at least something.
Yeah, and I love how, like, it looks so. Honestly, just that one image is staged so well. Like, it conveys perfectly that Brad is like, "Dear God, what have I done?" And Frank's like, "Yeah, we boned." Like, they're both so clearly conveying what they would be feeling in that moment.
Now, do you think that this is a continuity error? When you see Brad and Frank on the screen at first, and then when you zoom in so that you're just seeing what's on the monitor, Frank's mouth is closed. He's just kind of cat who ate the canary, sort of smiling like that. But then when it zooms back out, you see that he's got this very toothy, broad smile. I I don't know that that's a continuity error, but I also don't know that they intentionally chose
Well,
that to happen. I don't know.
facial expressions are changeable.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think it was a choice necessarily. I'm sure it was just Frankensteining together many different takes. But it's not like I don't think it counts as a continuity error because it doesn't create a situation that doesn't make sense.
That's fair. Okay.
But Sue's to marry anyway.
Yeah, Sue is to marry. I maybe half marry with this.
Sure. When I'm Rocky and I'm in the tank calling Janet over, I like to actually make Wookiee noises.
Me
Or
too.
actually, you know what I do more often than Wookiee is Arnold. I give it a I, but
That's
a
so
lot louder.
silly.
It is it it is one of my few little joys in life, especially when I'm in that horrible tank.
I often do a Chewbacca noise, but I've recently gotten into this habit of when I play Rocky, playing it as completely devoid of any sort of brain. So I don't even like hide
Because
in the tank.
you don't have to act if you play it that way.
Hey, you're a cunt.
Hey.
But I don't even like hide in the tank so much as I put the sheet
Yeah.
over top of my head and I'm just standing so it's very clear that I'm in the tank but hiding.
Yeah, it is actually really funny when you do that. For a while, I had an issue with my knee, my meniscus or something. So it was very painful for me to kneel in that tank on the hard theater floor. So I actually was in there like doubled over, like touching my toes for the entire time that Janet and or Rocky are in that tank. Which this is in future moments, but that is like it's a significant amount of time. It's a couple of minutes. So,
Yes.
that's a long time to be in that position, but it was less painful to me than kneeling on the floor. I'm back in a place where I can get down on the floor, but I might just steal that bit, at least as Rocky, because it is honestly funny. She plays it up like there's a huge, obvious lump, and she plays it up with the trembling and everything. It's pretty good.
And I also, as soon as the blanket is, or not the blanket, the sheet is getting pulled off, I'm already waving my hand like I'm like it's a tail and I'm some sort of stupid dog.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's just something that sort of enriches our little Shadowcast experience. But in general, I try to find ways to entertain myself during what seems like an interminable amount of time. And I spend so much time chatting to my Janet or Rocky, depending on which one I am, just trying to think of something to say to them.
I generally go, man, I'm tired. And then they go, yeah, me too. And then I say nothing else because they can feel awkward and I choose not to.
Well, that's certainly a choice you can make. I try and pass the time. It seems so much longer when you're just in there.
That's fair. So, Rocky,
Uh huh.
he sure got dirty after the last time we saw him getting chased by dogs.
Yeah, I had this too. What the hell is all over him?
I I think it's mud. What I envisioned happened is he's getting chased by the dogs and he like slips down maybe a hill because if you look when he's getting chased, the grounds aren't completely level. So he might have slipped off and taken a bit of a tumble, maybe fallen into a bush, and that's where you get the cut on the hand, the massive owie scrape on the hand.
Yeah, I want to talk about this as well.
But
But
also there's another wound. It's on the right bicep. It's very brave of him to have these owies.
yeah, it's just crazy because, like, this happened at some point, like, since the dogs were released, and at that point, he was pretty much right out front of the castle, so yeah. But yeah, I did want to talk about what's on his hand. Does this merit medical attention?
I would say that it might, in so much as It probably shouldn't be resolved by Janet smashing mud and gravel and dirty fucked in slip fabric into the wound.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely agree that that is not the medical attention it should be receiving. But, like, from what I can see of it, if I had that wound on my hand, I would not even put a band aid on it. I would rinse it out and I would just move on with my life.
Yeah.
It is definitely not something that if I saw somebody with that on their hand, I would go, "You're hurt!"
But we know people who would say that. We know.
We sure do. But I like the whole King Kong vibes of it or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it feels like King Kong, like she just found this big monster who's been mistreated and she's the beautiful, innocent woman who's going to help him feel better with sex, which is what I think happened in King Kong. I'm not so clear on the details. She fucked that gorilla, right?
I think so.
There's entirely too much bestiality in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait.
but
Yeah.
oh, you were considering it.
I forgot about the Bambi.
She was like, "Well, actually."
Oh, back to Rocky's hand, though. I think I know your answer. Do you think it'll scar? I mean, obviously it doesn't for reasons that we can discuss toward the end of the movie. But do we even think that this owie would cause scarring?
No, I think this is a very super. This is why I brought this up. I think it is barely an injury.
That's kind of what I figured, but
I have literally gotten worse scrapes at our show getting in and out of the tank.
this is possibly not related to this minute, but maybe it is.
Okay.
It's hard to tell. I once got home from Rocky, went to bed, woke up, and when I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror, I saw that my arm was just covered in dried blood. On my arm, there was what looked like a gouged out piece of it, just like removed. And I have no idea to this day what I did, how I did it, where it happened, anything about it. It definitely happened at Rocky because it was dry by the time I got home and into bed.
Yes.
But I have no idea how this happened.
Yeah. It's crazy that you're fairly new to drinking because those of us who have a good party resume are very familiar with this experience.
Yeah, I was stone cold sober.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do we think that the slip was pre-ripped in some way? I have a theory about it, but I wanted your thoughts.
Are you asking in the universe of the movie or on the set of the movie?
On the set of the movie.
Certainly I do, unless it is made of tissue paper. I don't think Susan Sarandon would rip it that easily.
So I think that what happened is somebody did a very small, like, starter snip, but also somebody possibly did the old seamstress trick of, like, picking a few strands of thread out of the fabric so that there's a thinner part for it to rip along so it doesn't go jagged or diagonal or whatever.
Yeah, I think that that is all entirely likely. I don't think that Susan Sarandon or her character Janet would that easily just rip it, and it would not be that straight of a line, probably. I definitely think it was at least snipped a little bit on the end.
Yeah.
Once in high school, I went on a retreat with my fellow students that were in my program. There were like 20 of us. And there was a guy who like was really into bodybuilding, but like not very good at it. And he was kind of like our little mascot. He was like that kind of friend. Anyway,
Aww.
we got into the Chesapeake Bay, and it was after having to do a really like hard challenge in the mud around the Chesapeake Bay in the heat. So we were rinsing off and it felt so good to be in the water, and he like roared and tried to rip his shirt off, and it was not happening at all.
It's
because it
difficult
was,
to rip a shirt.
especially a wet t-shirt that was like, a pretty solid t-shirt. It was not happening, and he tried and tried and tried and then just had to like shamefully give up.
Aw.
It was so fucking funny. I nearly drowned because I was in the bay laughing my fucking ass off and could
Yeah.
barely stand up. But yeah. Anyway, I don't think Susan Sarandon could do that either.
Yeah, I do think that it was at least started for her.
Yes.
But those are all of my notes. What are your notes?
Those are all my notes.
Awesome. Let's go to callbacks.
Okay. This is actually a surprisingly good minute for callbacks.
Yeah.
So we would continue at, we started last minute with the, if only we hadn't made this journey, but you did. If only the car hadn't broken down, but it did. And then if only we were amongst friends, but you're not. Or sane persons, definitely not. So you can do that.
Nice.
When she puts both of her hands on her chest and looks up into the sky, you can say, I pledge allegiance to my left breast, the one the boys like the best. When Brad shows up on the monitor, there are several different things you could say. Sometimes people will just sing like once in a while, which is funny because it's from Once in a While. My personal favorite is to be like, oh, Brad smokes, because
I love that one. Yeah.
it is so funny. And then you, even in a response to that or just on its own, my asshole also smokes after sex.
That's good.
It's classic.
Yeah.
Another favorite of mine, when Janet is just weeping against the board, the thing about the transducer board lever is that it's very phallic. It has like a mushroom tip. So an underrated favorite for me at that moment is she's crying because she can't jump that high. One that I don't like, but that I hear every single time when Rocky is making that sound in the tank, people will start being like, Janet, we have Twinkies over here, and she goes to investigate.
Oh, you don't like that one?
Well, why would I like it? Is it funny?
Are any of these?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't, like, what's the joke? Janet loves Twinkies? Good one.
Okay.
No, I know, I'm being unnecessarily aggro about this, but I've never understood why that one's funny. Similarly, another one that I think is overrated and that I hear every time is, leave him alone, he's monster baiting. That one's not, I mean, it's fine, it's kind of whatever. I would never bother saying it. But one that's very good and always gets a huge laugh is when he stands up and leans out of the tank with one arm and gives her that look, and he's covered in what could easily be motor oil. If you go like, I told you, lady, your car will be ready on Tuesday. People love that one, as they should. It's very funny. He looks exactly like a mechanic. And then when she rips her slip, Susan Saran wrap, another favorite of mine. And then another classic, when she, and Leandra kind of alluded to this, when she starts dressing his wound by wrapping it with her slip and just sort of pressing on it. You can be like, yes, that's it. Bind the dirt directly into the wound. But that is all I have.
You got all the good ones. Well, most of the good ones. I really like right before What Have They Done With Him, when she has that emotional change where she gets like, I'm gonna go do a thing. She doesn't do that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
The callback is get butch, bitch. Because she...
Oh, got it. Yeah, sorry. It took me a minute to visualize what you were saying, but yes, that's pretty good.
Yeah. And then What Have They Done With Him? You can say they put him in a blue movie. Or you said once in a while, but you can add to that so that it's once in a while there was a song here.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's very funny.
a different iteration of the asshole smoking after sex thing is that if your asshole smokes after sex, you're going too fast.
That's also good.
And you probably don't like this one if you don't like the monster baiting callback, but for did they do this to you, you can say, no, I did it to myself. I'm a sadomonsterkist.
Oh, no, I actually... That one's... It's alright. That one and the monster baiting are okay.
Okay.
They're just not... They're not favorites of mine. They're not ones that I bother saying.
And then the final one that I have is, I've got more hurt than you've got skirt, so Janet, make me a 3-piece suit. And then the callback to that is, poof, you're a 3-piece suit.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. That's a very good one.
But otherwise, that's all I have.
And that's all I have, so who's driving the car?
Ooh. Now,
you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, so get the fuck out.
To the late night double feature picture